Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I'm your host, Laurie Hammer, and I'm excited today because today I have with me Dr. Kreg Kuffer. Dr. Kreg is a chiropractor in Jackson Center, Ohio, and he does a lot with emotions and chiropractic and emotional release. And he did an amazing treatment on my daughter about a year ago, and we saw a huge shift in some post-concussion issues that she was having. So there was definitely some release that happened to her, and she just like started to really thrive at a different level after that. So I've been wanting to interview Dr. Kreg for a very long time. So I feel very honored and very privileged that he's been able to take time to chat today and talk to us about the emotional side of health. So welcome, Dr. Kreg. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. It's great to be here with you.
Awesome. So how long have you been a chiropractor?
You know what? In next month will be 40 years.
That's amazing.
40 years. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. 4 decades.
Why did you want to be a chiropractor?
Well, I think I would eventually found my way here regardless, but my father was a chiropractor, and that was a big influence. And he went into chiropractic a little later in life. He was actually had a family, and I was a first grader, and I got pulled out of first grade in Ohio at a small school, and I finished first grade in a big school, Davenport Central Schools in Davenport, Iowa. He went to school at Palmer College, and I bounced around 5 different school systems. My first 4 grades of grade school, which either made me meaner than snake oil or streetwise or what it was. I always blamed that for me being such a misfit when I was through my junior high years. But God bless my mother, she lived through it somehow. But yeah, he was a big influence. And from a time that I was a youngster, I used to watch people, in the middle of the night get carried into or babies that were blue in the face because they were having asthma attacks. And my dad would put them on the table and adjust them. And next thing, 5 minutes later, they were running around, giggling. So I've seen miracles like that unfold. And so it was a big influence on me becoming a chiropractor. And I was blessed enough to practice with him for 13 years before he passed away at way too young of an age in 1996. And I've been running the practice here in Jackson Center, small little town of 1,200 people in Jackson Center, Ohio. And now we have 3 clinics and 6 doctors on staff and a full-time nutritionist that are doing what we do here. But yeah,
that's amazing. Your dad would be so proud.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell me, I told you before, I really wanted to dive into the emotional piece of everything. Because I think we, especially, in the alternative health world, we kind of generally let me start that again, because I'm not finishing my sentence here. So when we go to mainstream medical, the emotional side is never looked at, right? And then when we go into, chiropractic care, functional nutrition, that side of healthcare, I think we look at it a little bit, but I don't think we give it enough weight as to how that really affects us from head to toe when our emotions are off. And it's so much more than just, going and talking to a counselor or, talking through your feelings. It actually affects the whole body, and there's different ways to release that. And that's what I would love to get into today. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. And because ultimately that's where we need to take all of healthcare, because it comes down to a simple fact. And that's the fact that we're energy beings. Okay. We're first and foremost, we're energy. We're not a physical body with 70 trillion cells. Where did those cells come from? Well, we can take it back, and the big shift, and it was difficult 33 years ago when I went from standard chiropractic and doing what I did, and we never did the public version of chiropractic. My dad was a subluxation based chiropractor that removed interference and watched the power turn on the body parts and watch it change things. But slowly but surely, we started asking in the late 80s, why is it that oftentimes these subluxations recur? Why is it that they don't hold a pattern? And we knew from chiropractic philosophy that there was 3 causes of 3 causes of disease. And if you boil it down, he kept asking, but why? But why did this happen? Why did that organ fail? And you kept tracing back. you would trace it back to the nervous system that was interfered with, and the
Mhm.
body lost that innate intelligence going to that part of the body, and it became dysfunctional. And so then you would ask, well, what caused that interference? And it boiled down to 3 T's. Now, when it was presented, back in the day, it wasn't 3 T's. We've since upgraded it, but the 3 T's before, by D.D. Palmer back in 1910 in chiropractic philosophy, were traumas,
Mhm.
and toxicities, and auto-suggestion, they called it. We've now coined it as the 3 T's of disease, and that's traumas, toxicities, and thoughts.
Right.
Okay. And you can trace any and all diseases back to those 3 T's, and it's usually a combination of all of those things. But the big one that's not addressed is the fact that it's thoughts. So shifting people over to how thoughts can happen, you'd say, well, generically, every chronic disease known to man has a component of stress in it. But how is it you equate that and take that to people and get them to understand that? A lot of people talk about body, mind, spirit, but are they really addressing that? Okay.
Right. Right.
And that's the component. So one of the things that Dr. M.T. Morter, who taught me as much about thoughts and emotions and energy and how it equates to our autonomic nervous system, he summarized it to get people to move into this mindset that we really are an energy being. We really are a spirit. Is this? And when I was a faculty extension professor at Palmer College of Chiropractic, and then down at Life Chiropractic College, where I had to go in and lecture in the philosophy department every quarter, I would often ask my students who were fourth or ninth quarter with a philosophy class, I'd say, hey, those 2 cells that originally made us as a human being. Now, whether they came together by natural means or IVF or a test tube baby, that isn't important. What I want to know is when those 2 cells came together, I don't need to know how it became a 10 billion organism the size of your thumb when the brain showed up. What I need to know is just how did those 2 cells that came together, regardless of the means that they came together, how did they just simply divide to 4 cells? I don't need to know all the other stuff. We know that we can take those cells, we can break them down to the molecules and the atoms that make them up. And there's no lung or liver or little toe or brain in either one of those. Okay.
Right.
And so how did those 2 cells simply divide to 4, let alone 8, 16, 32, 64, onto this 10 billion cell organism the size of your thumb before the brain even showed up? Or 3 weeks into gestation, it's 10 billion cells, and there's still no brain. And all of a sudden, the notochord lays down, and it starts developing brain and spinal cords, central nervous system. Okay. How did it divide to 4 cells? Forget all that other stuff.
Mhm.
Well, nobody can answer that. Now, and I would say, now hold on, you guys all took embryology first quarter, right? Yeah. And you all passed it. You didn't learn in embryology how it even went from 2 to 4? No, they don't have that answer. That's because the answer doesn't exist in the physical world.
Right.
And science and the way that we're educated in our basic sciences only deals with things from atoms to molecules and bigger. It doesn't address, well, how did those atoms make that cell versus this one? And it all comes back down to a simple fact of the direction that electron is spinning around that nucleus in that atom dictates what that's going to be. Okay, so here we are. Now we're back to the energy. Yeah. So try to get people to shift over that, and the energy is between that nucleus and that electron that's spinning around it. That the wavelength of energy that's in between there, the quarks and the subatomic particles, is it. So without going on a tangent that direction, I want them to understand. Listen, people, around each of those cells was an energy field. It belonged to the owner. Okay. The ovum to the mother, the sperm to the father, and around each of those is an energy field. And when those cells come together, so do the fields of energy. And that's what those cells are growing into. Now, fast forward. Here we are having this conversation. Laura, as well as Dr. Kreg, both started that same way. And here we are 70 trillion cells later, okay? And to wrap your head around this intelligence, okay, because I want us to understand, and we're in here chasing all the physical effects, expecting to change the outcome. when the truth of the matter is those two cells grew into that field of energy. And here we are 70 trillion cells later. Every one of those 70 trillion cells having approximately 100,000 chemical reactions in it every second. And every second, 10 million of those cells dying and 10 million new cells being recreated, a constant turnover in our body. And all that's being orchestrated by this field of energy that was around those two cells when we started. And we're still growing into that.
I can't even, like, if you try to think about that and like really contemplate that, there's no way you can fully wrap anything around it, because it's so beyond us.
Right. So here we come back to, okay, so what's this got to do with, well, understand, first of all, we're energy. We are energy. What we're manifesting here physically started in our energy field. If you like it, keep doing it. If you don't like it, you better stop chasing the effects and you better get out to the energy field, because that's where it started. Everything started there.
Right.
If you got a disease process, it's there. Okay.
Can we back up just one step? Would you mind backing up one step? So when you say we're just energy, so I know you're talking about, the two cells coming together. I think people might have a hard time wrapping their mind around, like, we're just energy. So we're spirit beings housed in a physical body. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Because we were created before the foundations of the world. So we had to be a spirit, energetic being created by our creator, that we are now housed in a physical body. That's what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure that people know that Dr. Kreg is not talking about anything woo-woo out there. It's, we're talking about the creator of the universe creating us and putting us in this amazing body that he has given us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll fast forward to tell, give it a little more about my foundation, because this can step across a line where people get uncomfortable. Don't get uncomfortable. Yeah. We're a spiritual being having physical experiences. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this spirit, okay, and I understand there's only one image. Okay, this is what I talk to people a lot about in the COVID, to try and get rid of the stress in their lives and have them understand, listen, there's one creator of this universe, and that creator only made one organism in his image. That image and that creation, which is me and you, are supreme to all other organisms and things on this world. Amen. Our job is to make sure that we stay in harmony with that original creator to allow this to function in his design. When we go out of that design, okay, and it can be from the wrong choices we make. And I teach my clients there's 6 essential choices we make every day of our life that determine how healthy we're going to be. And those are what we eat and drink, how we exercise, the quality of air that we breathe. I'm missing one, but and then 6th one, which is more important than the first 5 put together, is what you think.
Right.
And how you think, because that's the major thing that goes in here. So circling back to COVID, if we're afraid of that virus and we're fearful and we're running around wearing a mask, scared to death that if we get it, we're going to die, that energy that goes into our spirit is driving us into sympathetic fight or flight dominance. That's where I want to spend some time talking about, well, how did these thoughts affect us physically? Okay. So I would tell my patients, we're the supreme being. We don't have to be afraid of this virus. We have to make the right choices to empower our immune system to meet this virus, shake its hand, build immunity, and move on. And that's what we taught in this office from day one.
Right.
In my office. Okay. And I'm not afraid to say it now. I flew under the radar to keep my doors open so I could be of service to my clients and get rid of the fear. I'm above the radar now. This next craziness about start masking again and go get your boost and everything else, I'm above the radar, and I'm like telling people, do not be that silly. Stop and think about this. So we're re-upping the whole thing about, I see it. I'm seeing people wearing masks. I traveled to Portland and I'm back and I see it, and in the airports. Stop the madness. We are the supreme being. Take care of this body, put it in a position to be able to work the way God designed it to. We don't have to be afraid of all these other germs. We're meant to live in harmony with them, not run from them or hide from them, because we can't. Okay. Yep, so how does that, how does the fear and those things affect us in our physiology? Well, being the fact that we're a spiritual being and we're physically growing into and governed by this spirit. Okay, body, mind, spirit. It should be spirit, mind, body, because the body is the tail. Okay,
right.
the mind and the spirit's wagging the tail, and we're down here in medicine and typical mechanistic philosophy of medical is chasing the tail and all the effects, when we're not even addressing anything in the mind, or very little, and for darn sure nothing in the spirit. Okay,
Right.
so what happens is when we respond to a stress in life, and I don't care if it's a relationship issue, if it's family, if it's church issues, if it's finances, it doesn't matter what it is. How we respond to those things dictate our physical reality. So
Yes.
when I'll use the case in point of COVID, okay, when we're fearful that we're going to get it, and that fear and anxiety and worry has us mask up, washing our hands, wearing gloves, not going out in public, and all those things, that fear takes us into sympathetic fight or flight dominance. And when we go into sympathetic fight or flight dominance, it isn't that sometimes our muscles tighten and sometimes our digestion slows down and sometimes our immune system's weakened. No. Read in any physiology book. I used to be able to quote in Guyton's Physiology the exact page and paragraph. When we go sympathetic fight or flight dominant, our nervous system goes there en masse, is the word. Everything, the major switch, and all lights go on that direction. Why? Because we as human beings have two functions. Number one, first and foremost, we're designed to survive. Way out front, survival is first, because if we don't survive, the others don't matter. Number two, and a distant second to that, is procreate and heal. So when we put stress into our spirit and our energy field, and that energy's picked up out here, and our subconscious mind gets that energy of fear, worry, anxiety, we're thrown into sympathetic survival physiology. Even if it isn't a real threat, the emotion of fear, it's not the germ, it's not the bear that's chasing us through the woods, it's not the divorce, it's not the bankruptcy. Those aren't the issue, it's the energy attached to them. And when that energy goes in our spirit, that spirit dictates to our nervous system survival physiology, kicking everything in mass, and that shuts down the digestive system. It shunts the blood from the forebrain to the hindbrain for the fight or flight reflex. It suppresses the immune system. The immune system takes a lot of battery power to run and continually scour the body to fight off germs and organisms that would be a threat to us, and constantly cleaning them up and creating antibodies. That takes a lot of battery power. So when we go sympathetic fight or flight dominant, since that's priority, our immune system is suppressed.
Right.
Okay. We can't do it. So one of the major things that we did, and when we approached, using COVID as the example, but it doesn't matter what it is. I have the same conversation with my cancer patients. Okay. What created this is this emotion, this emotion right here, and I'll prove it to them physically. I'll have them think certain frequencies and things, and their body will change. And then I'll equate that back to an incident that happened. It could be a year ago, it could be 30 years ago. Okay, I just had a multimillionaire in my office that has having terrible low back pain, and I found a word in his energy field. It was actually demanding, and he thought of different business situations, etc. But where we had to go to find out where that demanding came from?
Where?
Vietnam.
Wow.
When he was flying a Cessna 172 into enemy territory under the radar,
Yeah.
to take pictures, and repeatedly got his Cessna shot down and had to float it back in. Wow. Those demanding circumstances was the primary emotion that was still driving his physiology today. And we had to take a different perception of that to change that. Once again, the issue wasn't the experience. The issue was the demanding circumstances that were the feeling and emotion of demanding. Has he had demanding situations since then with the 17 different businesses in his holdings, et cetera? Yeah, he has, but none of them were as big as or impactful as that one.
Wow.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So my point is that energy drives our physiology. So when we go into sympathetic overdrive, the opposite, parasympathetic, is suppressed. And when we stay there long enough, continually suppressing the immune system, et cetera, it's eventually going to keep that shut down, where eventually it's going to take us down a pathway. And understand, we've got a very forgiving body. We can beat the heck out of this thing for years, holding on to and harboring feelings, but eventually down the road, the physiology is going to lead to this breaking down. And you can bet that when they come in here, 99% of my patients, when they come in, they present themselves with sympathetic fight or flight dominance. There's
Absolutely.
buried emotions
Yeah.
that are there. And we measure those with heart rate variability and other applied kinesiology, muscle testing to verify, yep, you're in sympathetic dominance. And then we do pre and post scans to show how their imbalance is coming back to the balance to show them why they're getting better. And when that parasympathetic is locked down because we're so sympathetic dominant, we begin to peel the layers. Suddenly, all of a sudden, they'll just explode into parasympathetic dominance like a genie out of a bottle.
Wow.
And sometimes it's magical healing that happens instantaneously, and sometimes it's huge detox it'll throw them in because their body can't process those toxins. So we just handle whatever the body deals with at that time, and then walk them through it.
Wow, that's amazing. So he was holding things on since Vietnam.
Like, 60 years.
How long has he had this low back pain? And then I would think people would be asking, like, so why can't I just release that on my own? Do I not understand that it's there? Like, why is that still stuck with me? So I love the Lord. I'm a Christian, whatever it might be. And I've surrendered my life and here I am, but I'm still suffering with this. Why am I still hanging on to it?
Well, I think a lot of that goes back to where did our behaviors come from? Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's how, why can someone, I use the analogy oftentimes that everyone's had a pet that's died or got hit on the road. And I'll use the analogy sometimes of how come we can both be here and we can share the same pet, and we look out the window and somebody's driving down the road and they hit our dog and he's dead. Mm-hmm. Okay. And one person says, gosh darn it, I'm really ticked off at that person. They were driving too fast. They were careless. I'm resentful that they weren't paying attention. They were driving too fast. And I'm grieving over my lost dog. And I'm just upset at the whole world. Okay, now they've attached to that experience of a dead dog anger, hostility, resentment, grief, and pissed off. Okay, that's the emotion they're attaching to that dog that's dead in the middle of the road. The next person's looking at it and saying, oh man, I'm going to miss that dog. But you know what? Golly, it was a great dog. And I've got 13 phenomenal years of memories with that dog. And you know what? It was starting to show some aging. And I was going to have to make a difficult decision at some point because it just was having trouble getting up and going. And it was starting to have some bowel control issues. And I don't have to make that tough decision. And it's obvious it didn't suffer because it was immediately dead. I seen the whole thing. I'm just blessed for the 13 years and so thankful for such a great pet. There's a dead dog in the road, and one is over here holding on to resentment and anger and hostility, and the other one's over here filled with gratitude for the 13 phenomenal years. Where'd that come from? What we know is this. We're pretty well programmed by the age of 6. Some research shows 8 years of age on the outside, somewhere between 6 to 8, we're pretty well programmed. And where did those programs come from? They come from our MFTPs, our mothers, fathers, teachers, and preachers. Now, yeah, sometimes actually them, sometimes just figuratively, but it was the things that we watched and observed in our young formative years growing up that we took on those behaviors, and we don't need to know who they are, and we don't have to search down who it was because it don't matter.
Right.
Okay. What matters is this: are you interested in truth? Okay. Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in truth, we can change those behaviors because none of us behave perfectly. We can look at those and say, well, why would I be upset? Why would I process it that way? And when we have processed something wrong, did that Vietnam veteran millionaire process his wrong? No, he's still alive. Probably served him well.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But at this point, his low back can't get better because he's still stuck in survival physiology, and the major feeling holding him there was demanding. Okay. And as soon as we released that demanding, that took his sympathetic survival physiology and it slowed it down to allow the parasympathetic to come in. Do I think there's only one emotion for him to get cleared? No, there's more, and I'm clear more, but I'm here to tell you that was the main one.
Wow.
And that was a big one. Okay. And that's probably served him well in other areas of his life. But the point is, at this point, for him to heal, he had to take a different perception of that and be thankful for the purpose that that experience in Vietnam served in his life, and
Right.
be thankful for the fact that he's still alive here today. And it's made him the man that he is to become the success that he's become. And he's taken that perception and he's revisiting that on a regular basis to continue to remind him of the blessings, the lessons learned, the quality characteristics that came out of that experience, to move him to a state of gratitude for all the good that came out of that.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to process it.
And I will say that, I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast, that you worked on my daughter, and, she was having some issues from her concussion, and I never asked her what the emotion is that you guys figured out, because I didn't want to know. That was between, her and her healing process. But I have a feeling I kind of know what it was, just given other situations going on in our life. And she kind of hinted at a few things, and the difference in her, like within 24 hours of you working on her, it was just a lightness about her. And, and she did everything that you told her to do and to say for like the next 30 days,
Yeah.
and just to watch that unwind in her, and just the gratitude that was really stuck. Does that make sense? Like it was stuck, and then all of a sudden it came out, and it's been a world of difference, for her since then. So, I wish we lived closer to you, because I can't find anybody like you close to me. So, because we still want to keep working on some things, but I just wanted to share that with the listeners, because I've seen that firsthand. Is what you're saying is just amazing. And I've done some other emotional release stuff on myself personally, and I've gotten really, I like get sick after it sometimes. Like you were saying, you have such a release,
Yeah.
it'll knock you out sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when your body releases that, Dr. Kreg, what's really going on? I know you're saying you're coming back into the parasympathetic, but there's what's that release, and why do you feel sick?
Well, because when we go sympathetic fight or flight dominant, as I mentioned, the digestive system shut down, the lymphatics are slowed, all of your internal organs, the blood shunted away from our internal organs to our musculoskeletal system for that fight or flight response. Because if we can't run to safety or fight for our life in that survival situation, remember, we're designed to survive, number one, heal and procreate, number two. So when that emotion is there holding us in sympathetic fight or flight dominance, we're there. All these physiological things happen. And the big part of it is the lymph system, the immune system, the digestive system. It's slowed way down, and it shunts the blood away from those things into our musculoskeletal for that fight or flight response. So as a result of that, all of a sudden that's happening. And now all of a sudden we're slowing down the sympathetics and engaging the parasympathetics. And like a genie out of a bottle, it comes out, and your body just purges all kinds of toxins, and it flushes the blood into the gut and starts cleaning up stuff there and speeds up all of the internal organs. And now there's just a huge major detox that's going on in our body. Not every time, every time, because sometimes people get up and they just have cathartic emotional breakthroughs where they just cry like a baby. And I remember I had an NFL football player on my bench table one time, and he come from the inner cities of Philadelphia, and he's a very strong Christian, and but he's huge. This guy is 6'7", 300 pounds. And I had to take some emotions on him back to his childhood, gangs and some other stuff, and clear some things out. And he actually started sweating, crying, and convulsing on my table. He had so much pressed inside of him. And so those are some things that can happen. You don't like those, but but I've seen it enough times that I simply look them in the eye and I smile and I say, this is a good thing. Ride it out, man. We're going to get there. And what I would rather have the other ones where they get up off the table and they're like, holy cow, all that weight's on my shoulders. I completely feel different. It's gone. The pain's gone, or they come in and, and they go back for their follow-up scan, 2 weeks later, and like the mass is completely gone. Where'd that go? It's just gone. And the oncologist says, what did you do? Well, there's only one thing I did. Okay. And I've been dealing with watching this for a year. There's only one thing I did. I let go of some stuff. Somebody helped me find out where this came from. And I went back and I changed my perception of it. And I turned my body loose so it could recognize what was going on and clean it up. And I'm just, those are the fun ones when you get to watch those miracles unfold.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I love that. Because we don't want to ever say that we cure cancer because the body does, right? But,
Absolutely.
behind every single thing, like I always think of a tumor as like, because you could take it out and hold it, you know what I mean? Like
Sure.
it's a piece, you can't hold an autoimmune disease, you can't hold like your gut,
Right.
disruption or whatever, but you can take a tumor and you can hold the tumor and you're like, this is an emotion that has been
Yep.
stuck forever, right?
Yep.
And you release that emotion and then it dissolves. It's amazing. And I don't know, that makes me want to cry when I think about it, because the body
Yeah.
designed so cool, so cool.
Yeah, it is. And it's a healing machine. All we have to do is just get out of the way, remove the interference.
Right.
And yeah, that interference can be toxicities. It certainly can be. And that's a huge factor. This body was designed to and we understand that. We understand that we should be fat adapted and we should get into ketosis and we should detoxify the body. And I used to think that was about 5% of it. I truly believe that's about 25-30% of it now.
Yeah.
But by far, still the big one that I used to think was 95%, but now I think it's 75%. Sure. It's emotion, it's spirit, it's what's going on in this energy field. Okay, what's our beliefs say? Okay, if we get the big C word diagnosis, okay, what's our belief? What do we equate death with cancer, or do we understand, is our belief that this body can heal anything greater than that belief? And that's a question ultimately we have to go back to. And sometimes even with this emotional work, we have to address people's beliefs, their beliefs about certain conditions, because those were pre-programmed by our MFTPs, whatever we've seen and witnessed in the past. And if we witness cancer lead to death, we need to clear that out.
Yeah.
We need to fill our brain with cancer was cured. This body recognized that we cleared the interference and it removed it. And that's why I love to come on these podcasts and share these stories, because this is the truth. This is really getting to it. It's not chasing the physical effects. It's changing the energy that manifested that physical effect. Let's go back. Everything's cause and effect. Let's go back to the cause of that effect out here that we got, that now we've given a name to. Let's go back here and address what was the cause that allowed, what was the energy that manifested that physical manifestation. Let's go back and change the energy so that physical manifestation no longer is necessary, because it's just a lower vibrational frequency. All that disease is a lower vibrational frequency of our energy field.
Right.
What brought our energy field down away from the design that we were created in? And when we can trace back through and find the energy that lowered the frequency, and we can change the perception of that past memory, now we've changed it from fear, worry, anxiety to gratitude, thankfulness for the purpose that served in my life. That energy, you can't have disease in that energy.
You're right.
It can't exist there.
Yep, that's what I talk about a lot. That vibration can't hold disease. No, it just it has to leave. It's like light drives out darkness, right?
Perfect. Bullseye.
And as a man thinks, so is he. So your thought process is what the expression of your life is. And in 2 Timothy 1:7, it tells us, God did not give us a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a sound mind. So fear is straight from the pit of hell, right? Because that doesn't come from God. So if it's not from God, it has to be the complete opposite. So if we understood how much power we have and how much capacity for love that we have, and just that sound mind, because we have the mind of Christ. If you're a believer, you have the mind of Christ, and there's just so much there. I know. And I sometimes even look at myself, I look in the mirror, I'm like, why are you thinking those things, Laurie Hammer? Stop thinking them, right? So, because they just kind of creep back in there, and you're like, oh, yeah.
And there's another aspect of this that I'm not going to go into real deep, but I want people to understand this other thing as we talk about, not only is this physical body growing into this energy field, but this energy field or spirit, it's truly our spirit. This spirit is also out here swimming in this sea of consciousness, okay, God's creation. And this energy field that we're electromagnetically growing into and manifest in this body, it's also electromagnetically attached out here too. So whatever's in our energy field is attracting to us the things that we vibrate with. So if we resonate with fear, anger, worry, resentment, we're going to attract more of those relationships, business dealings, financial things into our life. Okay, because this spirit not only does this, but also attracts to us all of our experiences.
Right.
So when those experiences show up, and these are the 4 words I share with people, I said, we're going to shift your behavior, and it's going to start with these 4 words, because this is the first step toward encompassing this to begin your pathway down toward a different behavior. And that is, there are no mistakes. There's a perfection
that's
unfolding.
so good, Kreg. That's so
Yeah.
good.
There's a perfection unfolding in our energy field, which came from our ancestors. Okay. It says right in the book of Exodus, because of their transgressions, they'll be cursed unto the 3rd and 4th generation, or blessed unto the 3rd and 4th generation. We're living at our ancestral inheritance. Okay. The good news for me and you, and I can most assuredly all of your listeners, dudes, listen, we were a lot more blessed than we were cursed. You look around the world, we're living in the greatest place in the world. We are blessed. So with that, but that doesn't mean our ancestors were perfect, because we weren't either. Sometimes they took craps in their spirits, and we got their spirit. And sometimes we do too, as you just mentioned. And why are you thinking that? Why am I going there? Okay. So as our energy field attracts to us electromagnetically, relationships, finances, jobs, circumstances, friends, etc., when that attracts us in, and listen, 90% of it's great, but when the 5 or 10% shows up that irritates us, or we resent, or we feel inferior or inadequate, when they show up, understand it was that emotion that was in our field of energy that attracted that experience. So when it shows up and we respond with the same damn energy that attracted it, we're just repeating it over and over.
As we get stuck in that stupid hamster wheel.
Yeah. And that's why you'll see people get out of one abusive relationship right into another one, or have one business bankruptcy go right to another one, because they didn't learn the lessons. And what's the steps that I took your daughter through, and I take all people through, and which leads us to Christ consciousness. I truly believe, and I refer to it as Christ consciousness. But I'll tell my Buddhists and my Hindus and my Jewish and other people, listen, we don't own this. Okay. We don't own this behavior. It's in all major religions. And those steps are this: when we find that experience that has that emotion attached to it, and we bring them in to reprocess it, we take them through these 3 steps. What lessons did you learn by that experience? What lessons were learned that made you a better version of yourself? And then what quality characteristics, I usually say what quality Christ characteristics, because the majority of my patients are Christians, what quality Christ-like characteristics, such as compassion and empathy and understanding and the strength and faith, did you acquire as a result of going through that difficulty? Okay. And then once you see the lessons learned and the quality characteristics, can you develop a sense of gratitude and thankfulness for the purpose that it served in your life, and the fact that those characteristics made you a better version of yourself, made you a little more Christ-like yourself? Then that helps them lead to thankfulness. Now, listen, sometimes this is difficult. I've had mothers on my table that had their children murdered. Okay. I've had, killed by drunk drivers, or business deals that went wrong. There's some difficult. So you have to have them understand that it's part of your journey. How you respond to it's going to dictate whether you're going to repeat this offense, or whether you're going to raise to a higher frequency and attract new and better things into your life. And once they understand that concept, they're more willing to process and do those things in that manner. But that's the steps. That's the behavior we have to learn to. But once we understand this energy field is attracting from the sea of consciousness that was created by our creator, and we're just an image attracting things, and we apply the Christ consciousness, it starts with those 4 words. There are no mistakes. I attracted this. If you can't take ownership of that, it's going to be hard, because then you can suck your thumb and be a victim. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's no mistakes. So when it shows up and we apply those 4 words, there are no mistakes. Let me get about the business of learning the lesson, finding the good in the situation, and trying to develop some gratitude and thankfulness for the purpose this experience served in my life. And that gratitude rises us up.
Right.
Okay. A lot of P's, but I tell people, a perfectly processed past perception always ends in gratitude. And the only way we can get to gratitude is by understanding it's here to teach us something, learn, evolve, and be thankful.
Wow. That's a lot, Kreg. Yeah. So how do people find somebody like you? How do they process this? Because, people are like, well, I have to go to counseling, I have to do this. And not that I'm against counselors, because I'm not. Any of you listening to counselors, I love you. Well, there's some things that you can't talk out. So
and there's some things that will have to be talked out. Okay.
Correct.
And there's
Yes.
so there is place for
Absolutely.
counselors,
Yes.
but there's multiple emotional techniques that can be used. Mine happens to be BEST. It's an acronym that stands for Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique. It was developed by M.T. Morter. He wrote a number of books, Dynamic Health. One of his favorites is Our Soul Purpose, SOUL, Our Soul Purpose. M.T. Morter, he's transitioned 6 or 8 years back, and his kids are running at morter.com, Morter, M-O-R-T-E-R. That's my technique. But we also do QNRT, quantum neuro reset technique. We do a little bit of NET, neuro-emotional technique, body code. There's a number of different ways to do it. I'm not saying mine's the best. I've looked at others. I'm more comfortable with this one, and I love it. But I was taught by the master of it too, by Dr. Morter. So there's a lot of them there. I think looking at people that whose heart, number one, his heart is in the right place. Okay, right. And if you were referred, and word of mouth is still the best, and you find them and you connect with them, then you feel more comfortable and open it up. So there's a lot of different techniques out there, and finding people and just asking, word of mouth is the way to find a practitioner. I know you can go to once again morter.com. I'm not here selling any of that.
Sure.
To find a best practitioner, I would encourage you to find someone who's an elite master best practitioner. That's a higher level of training. Whereas certified is like it's a starting place, but it's a weekend seminar to get certified, and you want to get somebody with more experience. But that would be some initial suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with as we kind of close it out? Because there's so much that you gave us. I love it.
Yeah. I think that I think understanding those 4 words, I think in summarizing, as people are listening to this and saying, yeah, but I just can't get over this hump. Understand that hump, that thing in your life, the bigger purpose you have, the bigger trials you're going to have to fulfill that. And if you, and that's one of the things that I'll tell my cancer patients that I work with, listen, your purpose can't be beating cancer. Because if that's your purpose, then the cancer always has to be there to fulfill it. Okay. Ooh. You got to get beyond that. What you have to do is you have to say, I'm going to write a book about the conquering of cancer. I'm planning my next vacation. I'm planning. You got to get out ahead of this thing and know that this trial right now in your life, be it bankruptcy, a relationship, breakup, or whatever else it is, this trial is going to catapult you to a higher vibrational frequency, a higher spiritual being, to fulfill your purpose as far as why you came here. And I think that we only get to that. Number one, let's have a purpose. Let's have a purpose, because it isn't our disease. Don't become your disease.
Never.
And number two, when you have that purpose, realize along the way you're going to attract challenges to make you a higher enough vibrational frequency to accomplish that purpose in life. So number one, get a purpose, and understand along the way, these challenges you have are to fulfill that purpose. And when you apply the steps of learning lessons, finding the good, and evolve into a higher spiritual plane, and being grateful for every experience along your pathway and fulfilling that purpose, it makes it easier to apply those 4 words. There are no mistakes. I'm going to attract some piles of shit. When I attract them, I'm not going to waller in them. I'm going to use them as fertilizer to catapult to a higher growth and fulfill my purpose in life. I think that's my closing comment is we're spiritual beings. We're attracting to us the challenges. Apply faith over fear every time, and you're always going to win.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. Those are amazing nuggets, amazing wisdom. I thank you so much for being willing. I'm honored that you took the time to chat with me and my audience today. It's such a blessing. Thank you, Dr. Kreg.
Thank you, Laura. Looking forward to the next time.
Awesome. And thank you all for listening. And I will see all of you in the next episode. Be blessed and be healthy.